Good morning, everybody. I apologize. I missed the intro for today. I was too busy. I got engrossed reading about the tax issues and what's going on with the federal budget, which is always fun and interesting. But when you think about how it can impact and will impact not only our current lives, but our future for our children and grandchildren, it gets a bit scary. Again, just number one thing, everything has a consequence. There are no free lunches in life. Someone ends up paying, and we're going to highlight some of this. So today we're going to focus our main topic is going to be: do you need a tax professional to file an offer on compromise? And I've talked about this, but I'm going to summarize it. I even got a little fancy with some charts and stuff that we're going to look at and talk about what all is needed here. So the IRS kind of lit a fire under me, and I'm going to try to present both sides. Try to be fair and impartial. There are plenty of companies out there that are less than ethical, or their mills, they bring people in and don't always make sure that they get taken care of. So jumping into the news for the day, first thing is a quick reminder from the IRS. Again, due to the disaster, anytime there's a national disaster, expect the IRS to come out and say, hey, if you were affected by this, the problem is proving it. So it's a little bit harder to prove on this one. And this one is about the October 7th attacks in Israel. So it said, businesses and individuals affected by the terror attacks have until October 7th to file the federal returns, make tax payments, and perform and do other things. So if you were affected by those, go to this site. It's just in the IRS. If you go to irs.gov, click on news, and under news releases, and it says who qualifies for the relief. It walks through it. So if your principal residence is in Israel or that area, or any business in that area, an individual business, sole proprietor, or tax preparer is located in that area, anyone killed, injured, or taken hostage, or any individual affiliated with recognized government or philanthropic work over there. So again, don't assume it applies to anybody. If you had a relative or knew someone and you're upset, this really is people that were directly affected by it. Go to the article, see who qualifies, as most disaster exemptions apply to a region, certain counties or certain states. When the Hawaii wildfires happened, it was the two major counties that were affected by the wildfires in Hawaii. So if that applies to you, look into this because it can really help you. So next article is about our debt. So it's interesting. The original article was from a Bloomberg article, and I wasn't able to find the original Bloomberg article, but there's many other articles citing it. So again, this just to kind of give you a picture here, I'm going to share my screen, and we get a look at some nice graphs here. This is for fiscal year 2022. So again, it's for each fiscal year runs throughout 2 years, because I believe September, October is when it starts. So this is for 22-23, I believe. But it just gives you the idea. Total expenditures, 6.3 trillion. Total revenues, 4.9 trillion. So, and this is directly from the CBO. Again, a deficit of 1.4 trillion. So imagine if you were making 49,000 a year and spending 63,000 a year. That's not good. So it just adds to the national deficit, which is going up and up. So one of the concerns here is this sustainable? So Bloomberg ran 1 million simulations to see, with different factors, to see how would this, is our U.S. debt sustainable on our current path? And of course, the answer is absolutely not. Bloomberg is not It's a center left financial paper or news source that again gives a lot of good new information out. So again, and I think the 54 trillion is a conservative number because that doesn't anticipate any increase in spending. We have Social Security coming up. That's a huge time bomb coming up in the next 10 years that will need to be figured out. That will either drive costs much higher or benefits are going to be cut severely. One of the two, and I think it's probably going to be a mix because it really won't be affordable. I mean, we talk to younger people. If you're planning on Social Security being around for your children, I don't think it's going to be around for me. And I'm 46. So in 20 years, it's not going to be the same thing. You might have to wait till you're 70 or more just to get a much reduced payment. So again, a safety net for the poor. I speak to people regularly that are making less than 1,500 from Social Security after working 20 plus years. That's crazy. They're living in poverty, abject poverty, and it's crazy to see. So again, the current payments on our debt are 475 billion. So roughly, that's about 10% of the total budget is going to tax debt payments. Now, the problem is when you expand this out, by 53, they're supposed to go to 5.4 trillion. So by 2032, in 8 years, it's supposed to be 1.4 trillion a year, and then it'll just keep going up because we're not making forward progress. We're paying 475 billion a year on our tax debt as of right now, this last year, but we're adding 1.4 trillion in debt. So we are digging that hole as fast as we can when it comes to tax debt. So that there's no way that this is sustainable. And so this goes to other tax issues. There was an issue today on gas going through the roof, and that should be affecting most people. The increased cost of gas. So there's with increased cost of gas, it drives inflation throughout the entire market. Foodstuffs, materials, everything that needs to be delivered. Trade generally, overseas trade with shipping, when gas goes through the roof, it affects all sectors of the economy. So that's why energy costs are very important. And so we're going to switch gears here. And this is an interesting article because it dovetails exactly into what I want to talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. And it actually makes the IRS point when it comes to an article that kind of got this whole thing going today. So a permanent injunction was filed against a company accused of tax fraud. Are there bad CPAs out there? Yes. Are there bad tax debt resolution companies out there? Yes, absolutely. So this is in the news. It's a multi-state thing. This is in Arizona, but this is happening in many states because this company, Golden Heart Tax Services, and granted, these are still allegations. Nothing has been proven. And yes, in my career, I have seen the government make all kinds of allegations, shut down companies, and in reality they were off. The allegations were very incorrect. It was done for political purposes just before an election, and I've seen huge injustices perpetrated by the government against legitimate tax companies and other businesses. So just because the government alleges something don't take it as gospel truth. But in this one, they're claiming that and these are the people involved, the defendants. It's in Arizona, Texas, Missouri, and Nebraska. So again, 4 different states. What were they accused of doing? preparing false returns to get higher refunds, and then they were charging through undisclosed preparation fees. So they were charging secret fees to make more per return. And here's a lot of the court documents. Don't want to go through all that. They're accused of claiming false fuel, COVID-related education and earned income tax credits, and then fabricating business-related incomes. So this is flat out fraud. If this is true, what they're being accused of, they should be shut down. Their ability to prepare tax returns, and that's part of what they're asking for, is that an injunction be placed on them where they lose their right to prepare tax returns for other people. That is not a guaranteed right. And so that's something that you can absolutely be stripped of. And I've represented people that were helping them out after the fact, but they were accused of fraud, and in their court or criminal case, denied the right to prepare tax returns. Now, in the cases I represented, I was helping to clean up the mess. We weren't involved in the criminal trial. We don't touch criminal matters, so avoid this like the plague. If you go, it's going to be really bad if you go to criminal court and you need to get a white collar defense attorney. They're rare, they're expensive, and they're absolutely necessary, in my opinion. So they were claiming they're working with a lot of immigrants that didn't understand, and the defendants were for Sudan. They would submit, use Sudanese immigrants that didn't really understand what was going on, and make up information for them. So estimated 10 million lost as a result of this, probably higher. So so they have a directory on their IRS website. I haven't looked at it, but again, this is just a good caution that you need to know who you're using. You need to dig into them. Whenever someone hires us, I always tell them, look, do your homework. Look into us. Don't just hire me because I have a pretty face. So, so this is the article that I want to spend most of my time on today. And this is part of their IRS Dirty Dozen. We've been talking about this: scammers, people phishing, smishing, using text or emails to directly scam people. And then they put my industry on the same par of people actively scamming people. So again, so there's some truth to this, but again, as you know, maybe I'm a little affected. We talked about the ERC as they labeled a scam, and they treated this as a cottage industry that popped up. Well, of course, it's a cottage industry. It happens every time the IRS does this, and then the IRS comes out and treats them like criminals. Like they're the ones that are the problem when it's poorly written law. It's the government throwing money out there like crazy for political reasons and to score political points when they are the ones that messed up the economy in the first place. So they put out these promises, and then they're now trying to claw all that back. So again, it bothers me when the IRS comes and treats professionals like this that are helping people to navigate and deal with a very complex bureaucracy, which is the IRS. So this one, again, like I said, targets my industry, what I do, and we're going to talk about the good, bad, and ugly here. So there's some truth to it, and we are up against another break. So we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So I've got this new article. This is the article I was just talking about regarding mills mills that claim their services are necessary to resolve debt. First of all, what is a mill? It's a mill. It's a term, not a legal term, but it refers to companies that bring in a lot of business and they just churn people out and don't do a great job. And so they're talking about companies that aggressively mislead taxpayers into thinking that their tax debts can disappear, mainly through their offer and compromise program. So they use all kinds of tactics. They'll say Fresh Start Initiative. They'll send nasty letters, which make people think that they're going to get levied, or with warrants, all kinds of threatening language. I don't think that's ethical. Not everybody does it, but there are plenty of companies out there that generate leads through less than ethical means. So that's why it's so important when you're looking for a tax professional that you dig into who they are. And there's plenty of people that do excellent work. And I'll say that hands down. I've worked for other companies where they did excellent work. They really try to take care of their people. So check out their ratings, check out what people are saying, and dig deeper, because sometimes, I won't mention who, but one of the larger companies, every time there's a problem, anytime anybody posts anything negative online about them, they'll give them a full refund, but they'll also do it in a non-disclosure agreement. So, okay, we're giving you a refund, but you can't post anything or you lose your refund. Which most people are happy to take the refund, but then it means that there's less online to warn other people about. So the gist of this article really is, hey, you don't need someone else to help you. You can just go and do this yourself. So, and then it says some companies offer legitimate services, but it encourages people to use their online pre-qualifier tool. And you can tell here, I've already clicked on it, and we're going to jump to it. I agree with some of the things they say in here. Taxpayers need to be cautious about aggressive marketing around the offer and compromise program. There's a lot of bad information out there about it. I do my best to inform people, but it is, and there are companies out there that try to pull in steep fees, charge a lot of money to people, and then nothing happens. Now, do some of my offers not get through? Absolutely. Part of that is the IRS has gotten harder than ever to deal with, and there's hundreds of cases that we've dealt with where we submitted the offer, the IRS changes the rules, and then all of a sudden they don't qualify. And I'm going to get a little political here. It's the Biden administration. They have changed so many rules to hurt taxpayers like you, and they have artificially kept their inflation numbers lower. They have not kept up with real expenses, with housing and utilities. Vehicle costs, gas costs are going up through this. So most people are spending well above what the IRS is going to allow. So ironically, there's plenty of times that you can get a better deal with the Franchise Tax Board of California, which is known for being one of the toughest states, or you can do an IRS or an offer and compromise with the state of New York, sometimes easier than doing an offer with the IRS. That's upside down. And a lot of it is just incompetence on the IRS's part. They've been horrible to deal with lately. And it's very frustrating for taxpayers that should qualify for this program. This part I do want to highlight. I agree with it. It's a legitimate program, but it's not for everyone. So I use the analogy of Cinderella's slipper. So if you remember at the end of the movie, everybody's trying to shove their foot in there and prove that they're the princess and the one that danced with the prince the night before, or they should be the princess. My Cinderella lore is not perfect. But this idea that it's like Cinderella's slipper, if it fits, it's amazing. It's a great program. The problem is when they want to take this slipper and shove it onto everybody's foot. I would say typically only about a third of people qualify for, a third of taxpayers to 20 to 30% qualify for the offer and compromise program. And here's the thing, if you know the program well, you can qualify, whereas normally you wouldn't. So, and we're gonna get into this, but as far as where it comes to assets, and I've talked about a lot of this in detail. I've had people, we put them in a hardship status and they want to do an offer and compromise, and we review their information, and they have dissipated assets, which means they paid off something that wasn't allowable for the IRS. Paying off credit card debt is probably the number one issue out there that prevents people from qualifying. The IRS is getting very aggressive right now about finding reasons why people don't qualify. So if you used to be that if you took out debt, and it's what caused the debt, so you cashed out your 401k, and it's what caused the debt, that they wouldn't look at those funds as long as you use them for a particular purpose. They wouldn't qualify that as a dissipated asset, or they wouldn't dig into too much, because that's what caused the debt. You made a mistake, something happened, and now you're trying to deal with the mess. Now the IRS is digging into that even more and trying to reject offers based on technicalities more than ever. So again, they're going to repeat this: beware of offer and compromise programs. And they want you, if you think it's a scam, you can always report to suspected abusive tax promotions or preparers. And that's not just that's for tax preparers as well as companies doing offer and compromises. So I'm going to step away from this article, and I'm going to share the IRS's what they promote here as their tool to determine if you qualify. So it's a pre-qualifier tool. Just need to find it here. This is what it looks like. If you type in offer and compromise pre-qualifier, it'll bring it up. So you put in these are just basic questions. You're on your bankruptcy. Have you filed all your returns? I'm just clicking yes because there's some issues. Most people don't understand them. They're asking very specific things. And so again, they do have some explanations here, but this is where a lot of people get tripped up because they don't understand what the IRS is looking for and what they're asking for. So again, do you have any? I'm just going to click no, yes, yes, NA to move forward. As for your basic information, it goes through. So again, I had filled this out earlier and it didn't keep my information. But again, I have run through this before. I have had people go through and run their numbers for this. It is inaccurate. Plain and simple. And why? And they tell people, hey, use our pre-qualifier. And they want people to do it so much that on the 656, which is one of the forms you need to file for, that's the key form to file for an offer and compromise, there's a little block. Did you use a pre-qualifier tool? I always check no, but they insist that you check one or the other. And why don't I use it? Because I know it better than them. I know that their qualifier is flawed. It will tell people they don't qualify when they do, but worse yet, it's just as bad as other programs that will tell people they qualify when they don't. So can you rely on this? No. And I've had people where they went to other tax professionals, they told them, no, you don't qualify. They used the pre-qualifier, the pre-qualifier told them, no, you don't qualify, and I qualified them. But even more dangerous, and I put in numbers just right before the meeting or the show, and that person that offer should have been rejected. It had too much future income. It was about $1,500 a month in future income, and the debt was only $50,000 from the current year. IRS would have had plenty of time to collect on that, and I can tell you hands down that offer would have been rejected. It is an imperfect pre-qualifier. I don't know who drafted this and who put this together, but they did an imperfect job. If they paid me enough money, I could go in and fix it for them. Now, to be fair, I'll stop sharing. The CRM that I use, their program is imperfect too. So a lot of tax professionals out there, if they don't have years and years of experience and they haven't been trained by competent professionals on how to do this, they go and they get a CRM and it gives them false positives too. So a CRM is a case management system or client relations management tool. And if you're not if you have a professional that's not using one of these, run. They'll drop the ball. They'll miss deadlines. Run for the hills. Get away from the train on that company. But I have yet to see a good offer and compromise program, where you can just plug in the numbers and it will ask the right questions and it will give you good analysis. So I've talked about this at length, and I'm kind of rehashing some of these issues. One, because I'm getting better with the tools here. So we're going to jump on a whiteboard that I prepared with some of my notes for what needs to be done for an offer and compromise. So I'm going to go ahead and share this whiteboard screen, and there's two sections to it. Okay, so this is a tutorials point. Just started playing with this, but this is understanding the process. Now, can you do an offer and compromise without a tax professional? Yes. Is it likely it will be successful? In my opinion, no. And a lot of that is because what the IRS has done to make this harder than ever. And these are changes that this current administration has made. So on one hand, they're telling you beware of scammers, which, there are scammers out there. There are people that they do work and they hire attorneys, they hire enrolled agents that do the work, but either they have too much work and they can't follow up on it, or they just don't know it as well as they should. So it's one of the two. And I have trained tax professionals on how to do this. I've lectured on these very issues. So it's important to understand the offer process. And this all goes into it. So it's not just let's submit an offer and see if it gets accepted or not. Caveat here. If you submit too many offers that get rejected, the IRS can say, hey, you're just filing frivolously. We're not going to accept any more offers from you. Now, it has to be probably more than 3 to 4 times. But once you hit 4 to 5 times, they could come out and say it. And it depends on how quickly. If you're just filing one offer after another, it can really hurt you in the end. So be aware of that. But I've had plenty of people that have filed. The offer gets rejected. Then they come to me and they say, what happened? What's going on here? And I review their case and I say, oh, well, you need to make some adjustments. Now you're going to qualify and you submit it. So compliance. Compliance is so important, not just for an offer, but every single case. Filing compliance is big. And if you don't do this right, your offer is just going to get returned to you with no appeal rights. So these are why I'm going to hit on the major reasons why offers get returned and what the whole process looks like. So you have to make sure that all required returns need to be filed and processed. Now this is for the IRS. So if you haven't filed certain returns because you didn't think you had a filing requirement, you need to check and make sure. Which means pulling transcripts and seeing if the IRS has information that you don't and that they think that you might have to file some returns. Because if you file an offer and not all of your returns have been filed, currently it's 2018 through 2023, the last 6 years of returns. And if those aren't all filed and processed, they're just going to kick it right back to you. Now, a note here, I had someone the other day that called in. They had older tax debt that they were trying to do an offer and compromise for. And they just filed their 20, I think it was 22. I don't remember if it was 22 or 23. They just filed a newer return and paid it like $10,000. I was like, well, why did you do that? And they felt that they had to pay off the newer years. That can be true with states, but with the IRS, you lump everything together. You don't have to go and put it on a credit card, which I've seen, or other issues. So one gal, true story, she paid off $10,000 in state taxes with a credit card. Okay, at least she got rid of the state, but we can use that to help her with the IRS offer. And she owed around $80,000 and paid off around $30,000 and maxed out all her credit cards to pay off the state and pay off $30,000 in credit card debt, or pay off $30,000 in taxes, but she still owed $50,000. Now she's flat broke. Now she has this credit card payment that the IRS is not going to give her credit for, and we're doing an offer and compromise on the $50,000, but we could have done it on the $80,000. And they cannot tell you to go max out all your credit cards and destroy your finances that way. So getting some advice, being guided through the process, having someone you can talk to avoid a lot of these pitfalls is so important. And I'm talking way too much and not moving through this quickly enough. So this is absolutely crucial. This is the number one reason that offers get returned, in my opinion. People don't stay current on your taxes. They might get, okay, I need to pay my taxes. I can't owe moving forward. This is for any resolution. If you're not current on the current year taxes, your offer will get returned immediately, within a month or so. They'll say, look, this is the money we have. This is what your income was last year. We're not showing you're paying enough in. And until you fix that and show a history of good compliance, they're not going to consider it. And that gets harder the later in the year that you get. So now we're already in April. So someone would have to get caught up from January to current and then continue making those payments. So the later you get in the year, the harder it gets. So really after July, a lot of times I tell people, hey, we'll get everything put together, but it doesn't make sense to try to get caught up this year. We're going to start in January, and you're going to have all your ducks in a row, and you're going to make sure you're doing everything right come January, because that's a lot easier. But that means we need to wait for the next year to be filed and processed as well. So you've got to get on your tax returns. You've got to get that together. This is one of the things, getting compliance is one of the hardest things for taxpayers to do, for many taxpayers to do, and it can take a lot of time. We're going to get into a timeline coming up, probably after the break. Then you have to negotiate with the IRS collections. I highly recommend doing this because if you don't, you can get surprised. You can get burned by wage garnishments, bank levies, and if you have an offer and compromise being submitted at the same time collections is happening, they can't release it once you get an offer hold put on your case. It becomes much harder to release this. So get squared away with collections first, which means either an installment agreement or a non-collectible status. Now we're coming up on another break and we're going to move through this, but this is really the meat of what we're going to talk about today, and then lay out a timeline and then set up for tomorrow's conversation. But we'll be back right after this break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast. Again, it's always turning my mind, and I just added a bunch of stuff to this. So, talking with IRS collections, this is where you call them IRS main line. Again, best time to get through 5 to 7 p.m. But you have to make sure the IRS is not going to issue collections, bank levies, wage garnishments while you're preparing your offer and while you submit it out. And so then you need to prepare the forms, the 433A, 656, and get the payments ready if required. So if you get a fee waiver, you don't have to worry about the fees. But if you don't have a fee waiver, you have to send a filing fee and an offer fee. So this isn't exactly a timeline. A lot of times you should be doing this at the same time. First thing you do is the compliance check, and then you start working on it. And as you're working on the compliance check, you also should be engaging in negotiations with the IRS. And during that time, you should be putting together all that information that you will use to negotiate with the IRS, and then turn around and use that to do a 433A OIC form. And then you also do the 656. So a lot of times, like right now, for anybody that's self-employed, or if their income has changed, or if it hasn't changed, the IRS is going to go for the last tax return. So if your income has gone down, things have happened, they frequently want your 23 return filed. Right now, they can't demand that it's filed, but by the time they look at it, you have to look into the future. In 6 months, we're going to be in October, and that's going to be the extension deadline. You'll have to have that filed, and they're going to want to know what's going on. So if you wait that long, not only are they going to want the 23 return filed by October 15th, but by then most of 24 has already passed. So then they're going to want an updated profit and loss statement. So if you're self-employed, you have some more work to get, not only submit good numbers, but be ready and prepared for when they actually look at the offer. So once you submit the offer, once you prepare the offer and you mail it out with all the substantiating documents, bank statements, proof of expenses that aren't covered under the allowables, any proof of equity that you don't have access to, etc., then you have to, once you get all the paperwork together, you submit it, then you have to follow up with the offer and compromise unit. Now this is harder. They are not open till 7 p.m. They usually work 8 to 4 or 4:30, depending on the time zone that they're in. And you have 2 centers, one in Brookhaven, one in Brookhaven, New York, and the other one is in Memphis, Tennessee. So depending on what state you're in, and this is on the 656, the last page of the booklet, it has a list of where you should send your offer, where you should mail it. Once you send it off, you should give it about 4 weeks, and then you have to call them. Has my offer been received? Did you get all the forms? Did you get payments? The term is processable. Is it processable? Can you process it and move it farther down the road? Otherwise, they're going to kick it back to you within a month or less. They're going to say, and there's times that we submit it. This is why you always send it certified. Otherwise, they'll lose it. You always send it certified in its own manila envelope, and then you have to follow up with them. You have to make sure they get it, and then you have to follow up. At first, probably every month or so. And it'll take them 5 to 6 months to assign an offer specialist. So you're waiting all this time just for them to have someone assigned to start working your case. And the first response during this whole process is almost always a rejection. And it didn't used to be like this. So again, when the IRS comes out and says, oh, you don't need a tax professional, actually, due to what the IRS is pulling and how they've changed things, you probably do, because it's so confusing. You read the first letter, and it looks like, and it sounds like, and it's written like a rejection letter. It says your offer is being returned or being rejected for this and this and this reason. And at the bottom of a couple paragraphs, it says, To contest this, you need to respond with this information. You need to show that you filed your tax return. You need to file estimated tax payments. It gives you a small window to cure. It's usually about 10 business days or 10 days, 10 calendar days. States tend to use business days. IRS uses calendar days, which makes it even tighter. So just expect the first response to be a rejection. And most people don't understand that. Think, oh, I submitted it. It's been rejected. But that's really the start. It used to be that we would file offers and the first response would be, hey, offer was accepted. We didn't have to sit there and go back and forth and fight through it. Now we have to do that on every single case. You have to provide them timely. Once you get an offer specialist assigned, you need to call them directly. You need to get their name, their number, and you should have their IRS badge number. So you have to, whatever they request, you have to provide it very quickly, very timely. Again, it's people get frustrated. I waited 6 months for them, and now they want things in a week. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. That's exactly how it works. And you can ask for additional time, but you have to be on top of it. You have to be in communication with them. And they're so busy that you might send the documents and they'll close out your case because they didn't receive it or they just didn't see the facts. So that's why when I submit documents, I'm calling them every 2 to 3 days to make sure, hey, did you get this? Did you get this? Did you get this? And once they say, I got it, leave me alone, I'm saying, great, I'll leave you alone. I'll follow up in a couple of weeks to see if they need anything more. But I am following up. I am hounding that offer specialist to make sure my case gets taken care of, for my clients. And so sometimes what they request can be very technical. There can be legal ramifications, sometimes going outside of tax law where it delves into property or community property law or family law. And it's important to have someone that understands this. So, and sometimes they're just plain stupid. And I don't mean that to be rude, but the level of training has gone down. And we have had people literally offer specialists pull up some bank statements, make up their own profit and loss statement that claim they were making 3 times more than they've ever made in their lives. Literally making stuff up. And I mean literally. If it just gets stupid or it's too ridiculous, ask for a manager. Ask for a manager. Ask for a manager. If there's any kind of rejection, and this is another frustrating thing that came out recently with the IRS offer unit, they have been very unclear about when you need to file an appeal. So recently we had a case where we filed an appeal, we submitted the appeal, and then we were told, oh, you filed it too quickly, we can't do anything with this. You didn't file it timely. Like half the time we don't know when you guys actually want to file it. So I spoke to an offer manager and she said, look, just file it. If they tell you don't file it, and I tell this is what your offer specialists are telling people. They're giving them bad information. And she's like, okay, I'll talk to them. But at the same time, if you have any questions, you need to file that appeal to make sure that you have that right. So again, you have to have that appeal ready. If you get something stupid, they're not listening to you, or they're just not following the IRS rules. We've seen that more often than lately, than ever before. And now, used to be when you went and appealed the case, I used to do it very rarely. When I started doing this, it was very, very rare that I ever appealed the case. We're appealing about half of our cases now and getting them accepted most of the time. The reason for it, the offer specialists are not very well trained. There are some that are great. There's a lot that they're not very well trained. They make a lot of mistakes, simple mistakes. One of them where they found a vehicle and they say, well, what happened to this vehicle? We got the information from the client. The vehicle was totaled. Another one was traded in, and they never made the adjustment. And they still said you need to pay this amount for your offer, including the equity in the vehicle. So we had to appeal it just to get these simple issues resolved. Now, again, most of the appeal officers are better, but they have some new ones, and I've seen some new ones that really just didn't understand what was going on. So don't be afraid to use their manager. Now, if this sounds complicated, it's because it is. It's been made harder than ever by the current administration, the current IRS, and then they tell you you don't need a tax preparer, just use our online tool, which is deeply flawed. So that's why I might be a little keyed up about this one. So, just to give you an idea of the timeline for an offer on compromise. So, this is really going to, I drafted this to kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at. A lot of times when we first start with an individual, they need to do tax preparation first. It can take a couple months, depending on how quick the taxpayer moves, to get the tax returns prepared. Once you submit them, especially on older returns, expect 5 to 6 months. So if it's 1 month where you do the compliance, you check, make sure everything's ready. Someone's already got all their tax returns filed, they've already got everything together, great. It's pretty easy to get through this part. If they don't, and they need to get tax returns prepared, and then we need to file them and wait for the IRS to process them, 6 to 7 months for that process. And it can be up to 9 months because there's times the IRS loses tax returns or they just don't process it, and they're good at losing stuff. Establishing payment compliance. I gave that 3 to 6 months because you have it. If you've already been paying or you're on W-2 and you're already withholding enough taxes, that's easy. If you're self-employed and you haven't been paying taxes and you need to establish that, 3 to 6 months. And some of these can run concurrently. So hopefully, we can get, as we do the tax prep done and we've submitted the tax returns, you should be getting on top of that as far as filing your tax returns. Now we have the prepare the offer compromise documents. Pretty easiest part of the process. As long as we have the tax returns done and payment compliance, we can put those numbers together and get this taken care of for you. Follow up, 5 to 6 months. So this is something you cannot adjust. That's just how long they're taking on this. And then you negotiate the offer 1 to 2 months. To negotiate, it's usually, for better or worse, it's usually done in that time period. And then to appeal the offer, if you have to appeal it, that's another couple months. So I thought I had written it in here, but total time, estimated time period, it can be as quick as 7 to 8 months for an offer on compromise. Or it can be up to 24 months to go through the offer and compromise process. And that means you've got to be on top of it the whole time. You have to understand the process. And again, more than ever, the IRS has made it harder than ever to deal with this. So when you see this article, and this is why I go back to the IRS article, beware of offer and compromise mills. And they do acknowledge that some companies do good work. Can you do an offer on your own? You can submit it, you can prepare it on your own. But if you talk to someone that all they're doing is saying, hey, roses, 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 and not explaining it, be very cautious. And I'll have people that call and say, hey, I've already talked to the IRS. I've already put myself in a hardship status before. I'll give them some free advice. I tell them, well, this is what you should be concerned about. Have you asked for a first-time abatement? You can do this. We don't even charge for that advice. And then there's plenty of times people that are comfortable setting up an installment agreement. As long as their case is fairly simple, there's plenty of times I go through and I do a consultation and people just don't need me. They don't need our services. But sometimes I've had people where I thought it was fairly simple and they just didn't want to deal with the stress, the headache. So we charged them a nominal fee and we spent our attorney time to go and take care of this for them. And in general, my fees are about, I'd say, a third to 50% lower than most of my competition. Especially the big firms, sometimes half. Now, when you talk to someone, You should know who you're talking to, know their background. Like this other tax preparation firm, they'd been doing this for quite some time. But again, they were burning people. The promises sounded too good to be true. And they weren't giving most of the money or a good chunk of the money to the people that were preparing it. So I had someone the other day, this person told me A, B, and C. I was like, does that sound too good to be true? And he's like, well, yeah. Like, yeah, because he's not doing it right. So call and get a second opinion. And I tell people all the time, check me out, get a second opinion. We'll walk through this. So tomorrow we're going to have even more fun with the offer and compromise. We're going to use some more charts and explain some of these issues that are affecting it and what they're actually looking at. So I'm going to explain why the IRS analysis is wrong, why it gives false positives. And it's a good tool just to get an idea of what you're looking at. But again, there's a lot of issues with it. So this is why I don't trust it. So verify, double check, and get that peace of mind with someone that you feel comfortable with that will take care of you and be on top of it through the whole process. Well, have a wonderful day, and we will see you tomorrow.